about the Third World War. And this is coming according to, it will be caused by the person that Nostradamus considers to be the third Antichrist. He believes there are three Antichrists. The first is clearly Napoleon. The second was clearly Adolf Hitler, as he writes enormous numbers of quatrains about those. And the third is going to be born in an eastern country round about 2035, and he'll be round about 35 at the time of the Third World War, which will be predated by an asteroid striking the Earth in 2069. And then we have global war, and there are all index dated, so they were all meant to be, they're in different centuries, but all index dated 70. So they all clearly apply to the same thing. And there are a number of them. There are 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 quatrains very clearly about a major global war. And then after the war, there will be a phoenix period. There will be a period where things go better, and the bird comes through the fire and remains untouched. And then he slowly peters out towards the end of the 21st century. And as far as I can tell, he believes that the Earth will continue until round about 7073. Again, the sevens, this obsessive sevens. He has 2 quatrains at the end. 20 years after the moon's reign is over, another monarch will take over for 7,000 years. Again, this obsession, 7,000. When the sun finally takes its leave, my prophesying will be accomplished. And then he has one wonderful last quatrain. I will.
Anything about space age travel? Mars?
Not really. I don't get that. I've never really discovered anything that he certainly describes flying things, but I've never actually anything to do with the space age. No, I haven't managed to winkle it out. But the last quatrain, again, this is quite nice. Like, if anyone knows T.S. Eliot, you know the 4 quartets. Time present and time past will be judged by the great comedian. The world will tire of him when it is too late, having forsaken its conventional clergy. And the final prophecy of the Armageddon, 7074, when the great number 7, again this 7, completes itself, games will begin at the tombside. Not far from the turn of the millennium, the dead will rise out of their graves. And as anyone knows who's seen a doom painting, you go to Romania or any of the great monasteries, and you see the doom painting. The dead climb out of their graves, holding hands, pair by pair, and they move up towards the right hand of God. Those, of course, who've lived decent lives. The others, I'm afraid, head downwards into the mouth of the monster. And so that's a very clear doom painting depiction, I think. Sorry? Yeah. And the premiere was due to happen last Monday, 3 days after the Paris terrorist attack. And in the book, I talk about terrorist attacks, and we had a lot of discussion about it in the film. And History Channel decided on the Saturday after the attack, the day after the attack, to pull the documentary as it was offensive or potentially offensive or upsetting to the people that had lost their lives or the families of those who had lost their lives. And I'll tell you why. There are a couple of quatrains which are really quite stunningly prescient. And they were the ones I discussed at the time, and they're dated, I've dated them according to their index dates, between 2 and 3 years out, but I think when I read them to you, you'll realize how specific they are. The first one is, because of French carelessness and misunderstanding, the Mohammedans will find a way in. Blood will soak the Seine by land and sea. The Phocenician port will fill with sails and vessels. Well, that's very specific about an attack on the Seine, Paris, whatever. The Phocines, Phocenician despair, I don't know if any of you know what Phocenician despair is. It's again comes from Herodotus, as many good things do. And the Phocines were being attacked from all sides. And they realized that they had no possibility of winning. It was impossible. And so they decided to commit suicide. But before they committed suicide, joint suicide with their wives and children and everyone, they thought, well, we've got nothing to lose. Let's throw ourselves at the enemy and die. and they threw themselves at the enemy and won. So it's actually a positive thing. It's for sense in despair is actually something that comes out well, and maybe it's a question for the West that when you feel that you're at your lowest ebb, maybe then turn around and take the battle to the enemy. There is, and I mentioned this again in the interviews, and again it's another reason why I think probably History Channel pulled it, we'll find out, is there's another attack, a Jew. This one is the comfortably off will lose half their possessions. The trouble comes from three brothers. Enemies will seize the naval city, hunger, fire, blood, plague, and of every evil the twin. And I think you'll remember that they were searching for three brothers in Paris. This is not something common or whatever. There it is. It is quite a striking link. And I think either one or the other of them is certainly, I linked it in this book to the Charlie Hebdo attack, but really it's so specific about an attack on Paris that I think anyone would find this quite impressive, given that Nostradamus wrote these 450 years before the due date. And I should add that I wrote this book, the first edition of this book, with all this intact in 2005 for 2006 publication date. This is the third new edition. And so it's not something, people criticize Nostradamus or Nostradamus commentators for always doing something behind the scene. This I did ahead of the thing. I actually laid it down and it's written and it's there. Including, I have to add, a 2015 quatrain which I have called Hillary Clinton. And this I think is quite an interesting one. The masculine woman will exert herself to the north. She will annoy nearly all of Europe and the rest of the world. Two failures will put her in such an imbalance that both life and death will strengthen Eastern Europe. And I link that to Hillary Clinton. Someone wrote to me the other day and said, have you thought that it might be Mrs. Merkel? And actually both of them would fit very well in this. When they say a masculine woman, I don't think Nostradamus means a woman with masculine traits. I think he means a woman who does something that normally a man would do, i.e. be head of a country, king, whatever. President obviously fits in there. Going beyond that, looking at the years around now, in 2015 we also have a quatrain of famine relief, a famine that doesn't happen. And I would suggest that this might be Ethiopia. We know that there's a famine potentially coming in Ethiopia, and we know ahead of the game that this is going to happen, and I have a feeling that we'll be able to negate that, and it may be one of Nostradamus's few good quatrains that actually have a good ending. But there's more in the Islamic thing. We have also scandals in the Roman Catholic Church coming, and if anyone's read the papers recently, we know that there are scandals in the Vatican. And all these are written down in this quite clearly, and they're dated very, very close to the actual dates. So I'm not saying this is uncanny prescience, but I am saying that these things do, I think, bear looking at, and I think they stand up pretty well. In the years to come, there are many, many more things. There's another Islamic attack later. I've got it dated according to the index dates of 2021, and that's because the index date is 21, and I use Nostradamus' index dates. And this one is about the port of Agde in the south of France. It's again a French link. 3 low-slung ships enter the port of Agde, carrying infected unbelievers and plagues. Many things will happen. 1 million souls will die. The bridge will break at the third arch. And this, I fear, may be the chemical warfare that they've been talking as possibly the next major attack. Obviously, it's inevitable that one day someone will try and use it. It's a horrific thought, but there we have it. So this, all rather grim, but I think that given the 2 Islamic attack, specifically on Paris quatrains, I think I'm not surprised that History Channel pulled the documentary, and that I'm looking very much forward to when they do decide to show it, and we'll see what they actually say, as I don't know how one gets edited